Hello guys, this is your friend Dark Verse and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is, what if the Kyuubi never attacked? Naruto Namikaze, the Yondaime's heir and Konoha's most desired shinobi. Hinata, Ino, Sakura, Tenten, Tamari, Shizune, Anko, Tsunade. Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Beep, beep, beep. The bane of his existence. Oh how he hated that damn noise. It was just a nuisance. All it does is make a noise in the attempts of waking someone up if possible. But what if that person just turns it off? What purpose does it serve then if the person it is trying to wake up just reaches over and turns it off, or unplugs it, or maybe takes a hammer to it? The person who invented this damn device deserved a shot. It especially had no usefulness in his life. I mean, come on, why have an alarm clock if you knew you were also going to receive a follow-up morning call from one of the assistants in the house? He had gotten into a habit of hitting the snooze alarm about 3 months ago and was always able to get at least 15 minutes of extra sleep. Unfortunately though for the poor boy, this didn't last but 2 weeks after his father became fed up with him waking up late for his morning exercises. A follow-up wake-up call was administered for his morning routine, usually consisting of an elderly man, with long white hair tied in a ponytail style, using a minor jutsu to dump water on the boy's head, effectively waking him up in a foul mood. Not today, the youth said to himself, reaching over, turning off the damn alarm, resisting the urge to use it as a shuriken and chuck it at the wall. That would end the pain. He sat up in his bed and looked around his spacious room, kind of upset with all the expensive, decorative items strewn across it, given to him as a gift. But he knew better. It was only to get on friendly relations with his father in hopes of swinging decisions or favors in their direction. It was disgusting to him. The boy would love nothing more than to spit in those arrogant, smug bastards' faces for the way they used him to get to his father, but he just couldn't do that. That would tarnish the reputation of their beloved clan. Plus, he wouldn't be able to look his mother in the face again. He just accepted it, bowed in thanks, and took the gift and put it somewhere in the vast amount of space his bedroom had. Desks and tables of elegant design, some engraved with mesmerizing designs, others had magnificent gemstones embedded in them. Scrolls hung from the walls with amazing images painted on them or significant proverbs written on them. He had a dresser with a mirror built into it on the far side of the room, the mirror, as well the dresser, embroidered with amber-colored gems, that seemed to shine forever, even with the dimmest of light provided by the moon. His bed was his favorite gift though, for he actually got the most use out of it. The mattress was made up of soft, exquisite material that made it just conform to the user's shape, giving both firmness yet comfort. The sheets were thin, delicately made out of silk in a dark orangish color, and the comforter, which was thick and made especially for the coldest days of winter, was large, covering all of the bed but was currently kicked onto the floor because it made him too freaking hot in the evening and was patched with many diamond-shaped patterns, with the symbol of the village sewn into it. The framework of the bed was 4-poster, each post having a large amber-colored sphere at the top, connected to the bed by thick, yet smooth, poles with lightning designs carved into them. The head of the bed, which was littered with pillows, though he only needed 2 or 3 to sleep, had the design of the village made by steel and connected to the 2 head posts. The bed was king size as well, making the young boy feel quite small in comparison. He heard the familiar, telltale sound of a pair of rather large sandals, probably belonging to a rather big man, making their way to his room. The sound came closer and closer, then stopping as the sound reached right outside his room. The boy could see the shadow of the man from through his sliding door, the material on the doors never being thick enough to stop light from being seen either inside the room or outside it, or thick enough to stop anyone from seeing an intruder outside the door. The door began to open and a head popped through the doorway, looking inside to see the condition of the young boy he was told to check up on. He saw the said boy in his bed, but instead of still laying down, like he had been numerous times before, he was now sitting up and looking straight at the man. This man seemed to be rather tall, like the boy assumed, his wild white hair finding only some semblance of order in the form of a ponytail style, even though the hair was still extremely long, shaggy, and looked unbearable. As this man looked at the boy, he realized something was amiss. The boy was smiling at him with an ever-arrogant smirk, 2 fingers pointing at an area above the man's head. He looked up to the area the child was pointing at, only to be hit from above by a puddle of water, which instantly soaked the man's head and the top part of his clothes. His hair matted down now with the moisture from the water. He raised a hand up and batted some of his bangs out of his eyes and looked at the boy with a hint of annoyance, but it was quickly diminished when he saw the boy holding his sides and laughing at him with such glee. It may be a bad way to start out, but at least he won't be such a brat this morning. So you mastered that one, did you? Just thought I'd give you a piece of your own medicine. But yes, I did finally get it mastered. The technique was simple enough. A few hand seals and one would be able to thicken the air with moisture, then condense it into a small, or if you used a lot of chakra, a large, puddle of water that had many uses. The hard part for the boy had not been the whole thicken the air with moisture thing, it had been directing that moisture while keeping it compressed. Kinda tricky, the boy had to admit, but he had finally mastered it after working on it for a couple of weeks. The elder man who had been the butt of the boy's prank cleared his throat to settle the atmosphere and get the boy's attention. Come now, Naruto, it's time to begin the morning routine. Though he said this to get the boy's attention more onto the task at hand, he could not help but be surprised at his speed of learning the complexities of certain jutsus. Naruto was like a sponge. He saw something, saw it done once, maybe needing to see it twice, and then he would practice it until he got it to do what he wanted it to do. He was determined and very strong-willed, always going against what was required from him out of his practices. Naruto's father had wanted Naruto's reserves and stamina to be worked on and increased before they taught him jutsus or any sort of technique, but the boy had found a way around it by spying on anybody around the house either practicing techniques or doing tasks using minor jutsus. Naruto was a natural, picking up on the water gathering jutsu quite quickly. He even had mastered an earth technique that was meant to soften soil for planting, which was how he saw it used. He picked up on it, studying the hand seals, practicing the control and feel of it, and before the old man knew it, the boy had learned this technique as well. He used it on the old man too, softening the soil so much it created a quicksand and he lost his sandals thanks to Naruto, who just promptly laughed at him, saying it was payback for dunking him into the stream the day before, during a chakra control exercise. Naruto, meanwhile, was mumbling under his breath, as he changed out of his sleek, comfortable pajamas, given to him by a feudal lord from Wave Country, and put on his pure black bodywear which resembled full-length body underwear, but this material was made with chakra fused into it, giving the wearer a desired comfort in any condition. If it was cold, the clothing would heat up, and vice versa. Another neat thing about it was if Naruto got soaked from falling into the stream, which he did frequently, it would dry off quickly, not leaving any trace the user was ever touched by water that day. This gift was one that he cherished, because it was given to him by a boy 6 years his elder, who just so happened to be the genius of his clan, Uchiha Itachi. The boy's distant looks and oddly disinterested voice were a bit unnerving at times, but he always seemed to be friendly when Naruto was around. In fact, Itachi had helped Naruto learn a small heat-gathering jutsu that, once mastered, could be used in a number of ways. Naruto was explained some of its more advanced uses, like focusing it to such a small yet great degree that it could start a small fire, for camps and such, or you could raise the temperature of other things, like water. He wanted to test it on the stream that he used for his chakra control exercises when it became frigid, so he could heat it up and make it more welcoming to fall in every now and then, but this one was still a bit difficult. He could warm up a certain perimeter around his body, but he couldn't control it yet, unlike the water gathering technique. It was going on 2 months since Itachi taught him that jutsu, but he just couldn't get it. That, and he had also spent some of his time mastering the earth and water techniques he could now use. After putting on the bodysuit, he looked up to the old man, who was a great friend of the family and who was his father's sensei, and who was one of the legendary Sannin, who were supposed to be the strongest team of ninjas in Konoha's history. Naruto felt honored that this man, Jiraiya, had agreed to oversee his training until he entered the Ninja Academy. Naruto would be turning 9 years old this year, and though he felt he could be in the Ninja Academy already, his father told him he would not have that happen. His reasons, who knew, but his old man always seemed to have a hidden agenda with everything he did. All of his statements seemed to hold a deeper, hidden meaning, and what the real purpose was behind this was anybody's guess. Jiraiya did know, though, why the Yondaime had decided against sending Naruto too early to the academy. The reason was twofold. He feared that Naruto might become the victim of possible failure and therefore, ridicule, if he did not pass. The other reason was, if Naruto passed, he did not want his son to be the subject of many comparisons. This was unavoidable, the Yondaime knew it, but if he could prevent it from happening too early, then he was going to do so. The Yondaime actually feared that the seemingly brotherly relationship between Itachi and Naruto would spark Naruto's desire to attend the academy early and try to pass it early, just because Itachi had done the same. Another reason for making Naruto wait was so that he could pass the Genin exam with the other heirs to the prestigious clans. Jiraiya was also informed that Naruto was probably going to be enrolled in the Konoha Academy, to help build his character. Interaction with other young children like him would do Naruto good, or so the Yondaime believed. Jiraiya, now returning the blonde boy's gaze, motioned his head out of the room, which caused Naruto to grudgingly walk to his doorway and towards the meditation garden. This was probably the most enjoyable time in the mornings. He was given the chance to sit down in the presence of such serenity and it calmed him greatly, helping him focus greatly on the day ahead. It was the same old, but at least there were still things that were enjoyable. This was one of those enjoyable activities, the others being lunchtime and the time he got to himself, which he used mastering the few jutsus he knew. Despite how he felt about going to a public school, he envied the children there. The only thing stopping him from not wanting to go was he just did not want to hear all the talk. Ooh, look, there's the Hokage's son. Oh, look, there's the heir to the Uzumaki clan. He heard those words and saw those looks so many times when he would go into the market. The greedy looks on the store owners' faces sickened him, not as much as the political figures' looks did, but it still made Naruto swell with anger. They may have thought that they were flattering him with the title, but Naruto just wanted to be Naruto. Oh well, guess some things can't change. They stayed at the garden for a little over an hour, until Jiraiya became bored. Naruto, however, had not become bored. He already was to begin with. It was just too routine. He wanted something different, something fresh and exciting, something that could actually grasp his interest. Hey, Jiraiya, isn't it time for breakfast yet? Why yes, it is. Hungry are we? Well, a little. I just want to do something else. Jiraiya chuckled at the boy before telling him to go ahead and get something to eat. He, himself, was hungry and wanted something bad, but he had to check in with the Yondaime, before continuing with this day's schedule. He was asked to oversee Naruto's training, but he really wasn't teaching him anything, so it saved him the bother of having to actually teach, which was something he disliked doing immensely. The fourth was an exception, though, since he was a quick study. Naruto, just like Yondaime, was a quick study too and could quite possibly gather Jiraiya's interest over time. He also wanted to ask Naruto's father if he was going to actually send Naruto to the Ninja Academy. If so, Jiraiya would miss the brat but would be thankful to no longer doing babysitting, even if he did volunteer for the task. Naruto's birthday would be a few days away. Why not give him as a birthday gift the freedom from this routine that the boy seemed to loathe? 1 hour later, Naruto had already finished his breakfast and was just walking around the compound when he happened by his mother, who smothered him in unwanted affection. She was an elegant female, always wearing something beautiful to accentuate her glamorous look. In short, she was divine, a work of art, so to say. She was currently wearing a morning robe with a light pink coloring and a darkish pink color to the decorative flowers sewn into the clothing. It covered her entire body except her feet, in which were covered by thick, cushioned house slippers which helped keep her warm during the cooler months in Konoha. They were white, with pink borders, and though they would seem plain and ordinary to some, to those who knew her they complemented her features. Her skin, while it always looked cold and lifeless, because of its pale complexion, made her look like a doll, but it was just another one of those things that made her who she was. Her face was smooth, cheeks rosy, eyes were a lovely sky blue, and her hair was long, going all the way down to the middle of her back, and had a cherry oak coloring to it. Back to Naruto's struggle with her. Yes, he loved his mother dearly, but her affectionate display was always just too much. After escaping her death grip and sweet kisses, Naruto made his way towards his room to gather the essentials he would need for his daily routine. Same old, same old. After meeting back up with Jiraiya, who had an unusually pleased look on his face, they set off for the local stream where they always trained. The area was surrounded by trees, which they used on numerous occasions for the tree climbing exercise. Naruto had actually landed in the hospital a couple times for using too much chakra to try and stick to a tree. The result, a speeding yellow blur flying through the air and crashing into another tree. Expecting to hear the concerned sobbings of sentimental get-well-soon wishers, he awoke to see his father, who only laughed, not at him, but with him. That was one good thing about his father. He could take any bad situation and seem to find something to laugh about in the end. It also helped that it was contagious, as Naruto had joined in with him. That had been about 4 months and 1 week ago, and now the tree climbing exercise was particularly easy. It was the annoyingly difficult water walking exercise that was pissing off the blonde youth. That was why he liked Itachi's training outfit that he had received. So now, here they were, going to that same stream, to do the same exercises, in the same allotted time, all just a boring routine. When they reached their location, Naruto pulled out of a little sack he was carrying a towel and a handful of shurikens. He looked at Jiraiya, who simply nodded, and walked to the edge of the water, taking off his sandals and tossing them ungracefully behind him towards his stuff. As he stepped onto the freezing water, a wave of shivers going up and heading back down his spine, leaving goosebumps in its wake, he applied a chakra amount and began putting weight onto the foot to see if he had balance. The foot sunk, but only an inch, which gained a smirk from Naruto. So far so good. Applying chakra now into his other foot, he started putting pressure on that foot when it reached the water, doing everything in his power to even out not only his weight but his chakra too. It was actually working, and he was beyond happy. He was ecstatic, but he had to concentrate or he would sink into the icy river of doom. So here he was, already performing this exercise at the beginning of his day. Not good. Now he was going to become irritated and bored even faster. Usually the annoyance of not getting the hang of the exercise kept his train of thought busy, but now he would succumb to his anxious tendencies when he was bored beyond reason. He kept applying and reapplying pressure, evening himself out and staying focused, until he gave a small grunt to get the old man's attention. Well, Naruto. Looks like we finally got the hang of it. I must say I am very, Very pleased with your progress. You might actually be doing better than your father when he was your age. I'll make you a deal, Naruto. If you can sustain that for a full 3 minutes by the time it is the eve of your birthday, then I will teach you how to perform a more difficult jutsu, okay? Alright, you have yourself a deal. But Naruto's boisterous response of glee had disrupted his train of thought and he fell into the frigid waters beneath him. It was like a bolt of lightning had struck. Mind you, he had never felt a bolt of lightning before, but Naruto was positive that this would feel relatively the same. The shockwaves that were rippling through him were so painful that he felt like he couldn't move. It was so cold that his bodysuit wasn't working strong enough. He felt like he was blinded, but he knew instinctively where to go, and that was up. After struggling with his muscles to move, he made his way to the top. Upon reaching his objective, he gasped for air like it was a lifeline, which it technically was at the time. After pulling himself out of the water by reaching the edge of the stream and onto solid ground, he coughed a little before hugging his knees to his chest and shivering. Collecting his thoughts, he let go of his knees, performed the necessary hand seals, molded his chakra, and activated the Kaden, heat-gathering jutsu. Instantly his body became surrounded by an enveloping warmth that soothed his body and unnumbed any frozen limbs. He could now hear Jiraiya laughing derisively at him, and turning to him he saw Jiraiya doubled over in laughter. Sending the old man a death glare, he realized that he saw something out of the corner of his eyes. The movement was brief and sudden but very noticeable. Is that a something, or a somebody? He chose to wait and see if he saw it again and, now feeling rather hot, dispelled the Kaden jutsu, very proud of himself for making it work correctly for the first time since he had been taught the technique. He turned back to the water, ready to practice the exercise and stay afloat this time. Walking to the edge to the stream again, he looked at the water trying to judge just how much chakra he would have to use in order to make the Kaden jutsu work on the entire stream. He decided to not try it and just practice later. If he used too much, he might make the water boil, and then if he fell in he would melt. The image was unpleasant, so Naruto just settled on using it the way he had used earlier just in case he fell in again. As he started to step in, he thought he heard something again. He ignored it and waited till he was on the water to see what the commotion was all about. As he gazed around, he noticed Jiraiya's laugh had dimmed down and now had completely stopped, and when Naruto looked in the direction Jiraiya was looking, he turned to look in the same direction. What they both saw, and what threw Naruto off, was a young girl in a light blue kimono, with long indigo hair, well, long for a small girl, and eyes that were a mystifyingly white color, looking at them while sitting on the bank. Naruto's mouth hung open, really out of surprise that someone else was here, but also from embarrassment that this girl might have seen him make an out of himself just a moment ago. She was staring at him as if he was the most interesting thing on the face of the planet, which sort of unnerved him, leaving him even more puzzled about why he felt that way. Jiraiya's footsteps could be heard as he walked towards the said girl who was on the other side of the stream. Oi, young one, might you be Hinata of the Hyuga clan? Hi, I am. I hope I am not interrupting anything. Am I? As she said this, Naruto felt something tug at him, like he was desperate for her to not leave. Her appearance was the first non-routine thing to happen in the past month or so. He was also desiring some form of companionship on his own age level. Itachi's visits were always welcome because he was as close to his age as it could get when all Naruto did was these stupid exercise regimens. He walked down the stream till he was close to the girl's location, then took a good look at her. Well, no matter if he hated the reactions he received after he usually introduces himself, an introduction was in order. Hi, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. Why, yes, I thought you were. I hope you don't mind that I am here. I can leave if you want me to. She failed to look him when she spoke, her head looking to the side, eyes averted so that she would not even look at him. He wanted to nip this in the bud, but Jiraiya did it for him. Nonsense, my dear. We were just going to take a break in another hour. You're welcome to stay until then, and I and my young ward here can treat you to lunch, if you would like. A vein popped on Naruto's head. Young ward, yeah, stay here with us, you can even join in if you want. It gets boring being out here without anyone else. So what is your name again? The girl, still looking down at the ground, as if afraid the ground was going to part underneath her, sending her to a bottomless abyss, began to slowly raise her head and eyes to Naruto. He almost could not believe what he saw. The girl, while not as elegant as his mother, was still pretty. Naruto liked to use that word more than cute, because he thought the term cute was a derogatory term used on people who were more mature, to see it as a compliment you would give to a child of 5 years or younger. The term pretty was a more definite explanation on how one would see someone else, plus it was a term used specifically on girls, so it just seemed appropriate at the moment. Her hair, while short overall, could be considered long on her small body and had a glow to it, as it seemed to shine in the sun. The indigo blue, which seemed very faint and hard to notice, actually shined when the sun beamed on her hair. Her bangs looked like they might be unruly, despite the fact that they looked like they were well treated and tended to. She had 2 bangs come down the sides of her head that were long enough to go past her ears to halfway between the bottom of her ears and the jawline. The skin complexion was of a pale white, but did not look so doll-ish like his mother did. Instead, coloration of the skin was actually a creamy white, which was enhanced by the seemingly obvious fact that her skin was smooth. Naruto figured it was obvious because it just seemed like you could see it as clear as day. And even though the kimono she wore was covering up most of her body, Naruto believed that she was small and frail. It was when she looked him right in the eyes that he saw that he had made a miscalculation on the appearance of her eyes. They were not pure white like he originally thought, but had a light purple color to them, like lavender. She had no pupils in those eyes, but the lavender areas seemed to move around like a pupil would, so he just figured that was how her eyes worked. When she spoke, he snapped to attention, slightly startled, for he had been wrapped up in his mind taking in the appearance of this young girl. He had not been wrong about her though. She was pretty. I'm Hyuga Hinata. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Uzumaki Naruto. You don't have to be so formal around me. You can call me Naruto. I'd actually appreciate it. Saying one's full name shows that you have a deep respect for or hold with high honor the spoken person. Would you mind if I called you Hinata? Her mouth seemed to drop in surprise of his statement, which raised Naruto's interest of her. Is she surprised that I spoke like that, or is it that I just want to call her by her first name? Did I insult her? Wait a minute, Hinata, that sounds a bit familiar. Come on Naruto, think. Hinata, Hyuga Hinata. That's it. She's the eldest daughter of the head of the Hyugas, which makes her the heir. Crap, I probably did insult her. I apologize if I insulted you, I meant no disrespect. Why, you don't have to apologize, really. I do not mind if you call me by my first name, since you have said I can do the same, and Naruto. Naruto, meanwhile, was a bit speechless. Hinata was the exact opposite of her father. He remembered seeing the head of the Hyuga house, Hiyashi was his name if he was correct, when he was little with his father, and his father made him bow to Hiyashi out of respect. He wondered if she was made to do those things as well, if she was as displeased about traditions and the sort being forced onto her. He realized that he had been on the stream for quite a while now, and he was shocked that he hadn't fallen in yet. What the heck? I've never stayed atop the water when my attention is not focused on the task. He turned his head towards Jiraiya, grinning a sly fox-like grin. Jiraiya, in response to the look, took in Naruto's presence and understood what the grin was about. Naruto had been on top of the water for over 3 minutes, closing in on 5 minutes actually. He couldn't suppress a small chuckle as he looked at this boy who had inadvertently won the bet they had taken up. Alright, well Naruto, seems you win. Congratulations are in order, but I think a simple break will do. When you get back, he cut off right there, for he did not know whether or not to start the boy on such a difficult exercise or to go ahead and teach him the technique. How about this? I'll do one of two things when we get back from this break. I will teach you either a new jutsu, like I promised, or I can teach you a new chakra controlling exercise which, let me explain the benefits before you say you don't want this, will assist in 3 stages of combat. It is very complex and difficult, but if mastered, can lead to the use of one of your father's trademark techniques. Choose. Naruto, who had made his way to land, not noticing it was on Hinata's side of the stream, was going to just choose the jutsu at first until Jiraiya explained the chakra control thing. If Naruto analyzed both scenarios, he would come to the conclusion that whether he chose one or the other, he was going to have to dedicate a great deal of time and effort to the study of either one. He wanted desperately to learn a new jutsu, but this chakra control exercise sounded, if it would lead to the use of one of his father's more powerful techniques, like it was a special gift. He just didn't know which one he wanted. Wait a minute, even if I choose the exercise I can still learn the new jutsu because he owes me a jutsu. It was part of the bet. Hee. Awesome. Alright then, I choose the chakra control exercise. But I want to make clear to you, old man, that you still owe me a jutsu as part of our bet. Naruto, learn to treat me with respect, baka, or I won't teach you anything period, understand? Why yes, Jiraiya-sensei. I promise. That's better, and don't worry, I'll teach you a jutsu, a good one too, when you are ready. But for today, we will dedicate the rest of the day to learning this new exercise, alright? Good, then I say we go ahead and get lunch. It was about 11 a.m. but Naruto would take it, a break was a break. Plus, he hadn't really been all that hungry when he first woke up, so he only ate a couple bananas. He then realized that he had forgotten about the young girl, who he was standing close to. He turned to look at her and noticed she was fiddling with her thumbs. She actually looked to be doing this in a nervous manner, although he could be reading too much into her behavior. As a matter of fact, he just met her, so it wouldn't matter if he could not read into her behavior, since he wouldn't know if he was right or not. A thought then popped up into his head and he cleared his throat. The girl, Hinata, jumped a little, startled by the sudden noise Naruto made. Hey, Hinata, would you like to join us for some lunch? He didn't know why, but he wanted her to say yes. He felt like he'd be hurt if she said no, and that confused him too. He looked at her expectantly, hopefully, awaiting her response. She looked up at him, saw the look in his eyes, and couldn't help but get that same feeling she would get in other situations similar to this one. Hinata was just a good-natured girl, who always wanted to please everyone around her, especially her father and his company, and she couldn't stand to displease anyone. The look in the blonde's eyes was one of those looks that made her feel guilty if she were to disagree or give a response that would displease anyone, and so she knew she was going to say yes. The only difference this time is that she actually didn't mind. This boy seemed different from all her family members, or the kind of guests you would expect a royal or noble family clan to receive. All the young children who would visit during those times would either be intimidated by her eyes, which always hurt her, or would be so stuck up and snotty that they would want her to do things they wanted to do. If she didn't do exactly what they wanted to do, they would throw a temper tantrum, run up to their mothers or fathers and complain against her, which would have an end result of her getting berated by her father for embarrassing him and the clan. This boy, Naruto, however, seemed different. He asked her, instead of demanded, if she would accompany him and his mentor for lunch. While she didn't know why, she would be happy to accept as long as she didn't get in the way. Again, her side of not wanting to displease them or being a burden on anyone interfering with what she actually wanted to say. I'd be delighted. Just say that. I'd like that. Unless I'd be a bother or. Nonsense, young one. I will escort you and my young apprentice to a place of your choosing. Jiraiya said, cutting Hinata off. He gave Naruto that, be respectful and ask, look, which Naruto knew what that meant. I'm supposed to be a good boy now and ask where she would like to go, as well. Damn manners. Yeah, where would you like to eat? Jiraiya will treat us. The mischievous grin he gave Jiraiya made the man gulp and causing a giggle to come from the girl, who tried to stifle it. After recovering herself, she cleared her throat and said she doesn't mind anywhere, and Naruto responded to that with a hopeful look to Jiraiya. He sighed before agreeing to go to the boy's favorite place, Ichiraku's. On their way out of the little clearing back towards the city, a man with white eyes and a robe with a bandage tied over his head came stumbling out from some trees. Ah, so this is where you are, Hinata-sama. Come, let's not disturb these men. He made sure to be polite about the addressing of her company when he saw that the men were the right-hand man of the Hokage and the Hokage's son, Naruto. He bowed respectfully before Jiraiya raised his hand and protested Hinata leaving. I assure you that her company is appreciated, as she and Naruto here have become quick friends. Would you mind if we stole her for a little while longer so she can enjoy lunch with us? I promised to treat her and I don't like to go back on my promises. Naruto had no idea where all this horse crap was coming from that seemed to be spewing out of the old man's mouth like a virus of lies. The man, while faithful, was anything but trustworthy, and quite frankly should be condemned for some of the things that Naruto had caught him doing when he was supposed to be taught by the old geezer. Also, what was up with all the talk that he and Hinata were now friends? That wasn't something you just push onto others too easily, as it could give people the wrong impressions. Naruto found no faults with the girl, but the title, friend, was just too quick to throw on them since he had just met her. Naruto thought that Jiraiya was trying to do him an unnecessary favor until he saw for himself, out of the corner of his eyes, that she was visibly tense and almost shuddering. He actually became worried for the girl, fearing she might break out into hysterics. Is it the sight of this man? Or possibly out of embarrassment? Fine. I will report to Hiyashi-sama of your location, okay, Hinata-sama. She snapped up, one of her hands clenched and going close to her face. He could see she was biting her lower lip visibly and her head was leaning down, but not so much it hid her eyes, which looked like she was panicked. He barely heard her respond with a simple, hi, before the man left. How he had heard her from that distance when he could barely hear her from this short of a distance was beyond him. Now that he was gone, she seemed to loosen up a little, but he felt a little sorry for her. In short, to summarize everything that he had seen her do, and if he had to make a simple assumption, diagnosis of what it all might mean, then he would have to say she was horrified. The question was, why? And he wanted to know. His curiosity getting the better of him, he decided to ask her of what that whole situation was about, but backed down. That could come later, he decided. Are you okay, Hinata? You look like you're scared or something. He saw her jump a little, still troubled, and that troubled him. You know, if he has done something to upset you, you can let us know. And no, it's not like that, Naruto-kun. Her face flushed a little as she realized she just called him in a gesture that symbolized comfort around one another. Why did he seem so friendly to her? She was unsure but just wanted to get off this subject. They had just met, and besides, the subject was family related. Jiraiya, quick on perception of the atmosphere, now without the presence of that man who he assumed was from the Hyuga branch family, decided to save Hinata some embarrassment. He told them both to come on so they could get their lunch. When they reached the restaurant, he went ahead and let the kids order and then made his. The food served here, ramen, was one of Naruto's most favorite things in the world, and when they came here, Naruto would always beam. So happy just to eat noodles, Jiraiya swore the boy needed more enjoyment in his life. He watched as the girl, who was being quiet and seemed to be quite shy and timid, unnatural characteristics for a Hyuga, he noted, just sat there, picking at her food until Naruto broke her out of her trance, asking simple things. Naruto may be a grump when he is doing the training, but he was more than bearable when outside of the training. Naruto found himself very compelled to stop the girl's moping, which she seemed to be doing since she hadn't eaten her ramen yet and was just sitting there poking it. He decided to break the silence and asked her simple things. The rules of etiquette always stated that when speaking to someone formally and trying to get to know them, ask questions if nothing seems to work. He asked her age, what her favorite color was, her favorite hobby, and then if she planned on being a shinobi. The answers, in order asked, were 8 going on 9, purple, spending time in her family's garden, and, surprising to him, yes. He knew the Hyugas were revered for their uncanny fighting style and were therefore fierce warriors. But Hinata didn't seem to have the qualities one might assume you needed to be a fierce warrior. He had learned though that looks could be deceiving. Realizing that she was 8 years old too, he smiled at her heartwarmingly, saying that they both were going on 9 and mentioning his birthday was on the 10th of October. Oh, that's a few days away. Yeah, but my birthday just becomes a quick suck-up day for any arrogant who would love to become noticed by my father. All they do is spoil me and give me a fake smile, wishing me an insincere happy birthday, and then look towards my father for some sort of sign that he is satisfied. He took another slurp full of noodles and gulped them down hungrily, surprised with just how hungry he was. Hey, Hinata, didn't you say you were turning 9 as well? Are you going to the Ninja Academy? Hi. Father is sending me there to get assistance in my training. Naruto felt she was lucky, but the way she looked said otherwise. Jiraiya, after hearing her say she was attending the academy, was starting to put things into place. For a Hyuga to attend the academy, instead of staying home and learning all there is to know about the Hyuga techniques, meant that that person was seen as inferior. He secretly felt very bad for the girl. The nervous tendencies, the fidgeting, it was all a sign of having an inferiority complex. Are you going to attend the Ninja Academy as well, Naruto-kun? Naruto almost choked on the rest of his noodles at the question, as well as the kun suffix. He wondered if he should add the chan suffix to her name, just out of respect. Well, I don't really know. My father didn't let me attend it when I wanted to a year or so ago, so I'm not really sure where he stands on it. I might, but then I might not. Jiraiya did his best to keep a straight face as he did know what the Yondaime was thinking. Hinata, however, ended up sulking again. Naruto did notice, but not the exact reason why. Does she feel sorry for me? Please don't let that be the case. After they finished their ramen, Naruto having more than just one bowl, they all decided to head back to the stream. Naruto found it kind of curious how Hinata was still following them. They had treated her to lunch, but that was all she would want to hang around for. When they reached the stream, Jiraiya decided to give Naruto a moment to do whatever he wanted while he went to check in with the Yondaime and get a scroll or two from the family library. He invited Hinata to stay if she wanted as he left. Now they were left alone and the silence seemed awkward and deafening. The only sound that could be heard was that of running water, which was quite noisy and would be distracting if he were trying to meditate. He just sat there, not knowing what to do. Hey, Hinata-chan, I'm gonna start getting warmed up before he returns. If you want to stay, you are more than welcome to, but once he gets here I'm gonna be totally focused on this new thing he's gonna teach me. Oh, okay Naruto-kun. Why are you doing such complex exercises at your age? When Naruto gave her a confused look, she sucked in her breath and tried to get herself ready to continue. I only ask because walking on water isn't a simple thing to master. It isn't something someone of our age should be expected to do. It's something that I do. I've been taught all these exercises to help with my chakra control because my father thinks that with great control, everything else will be easier for me. So I've been working on all these things since I was 5 and I haven't stopped since. And so he went into explanations as she asked him more questions, she seeming to get over her shyness around him and he getting more comfortable and actually not caring that he was explaining all these things to her. From his exercises, to his jutsus, to his bodysuit, to personal interests. He was finding the prospect of them being friends a lot more likely now. He totally forgot that he was going to warm up before Jiraiya returned, but he didn't care, he was having fun. Jiraiya was now inside of a rather tall and large-looking building, the office of the Hokage. Its massive structure allowed for many offices to reside in the building with many people who could assist the Hokage from anything between simple paperwork to diplomatic issues. Some people were filers, others were accountants, some ran errands, many were assistants, and the rest were guards. Not that he really needed any, but it was just customary. As Jiraiya climbed the flight of stairs to the top floor where the Hokage's office resides and reached the door, he requested his presence with the Yondaime and got the nod from the 2 men at the door. One was a young man with wild spiky hair going every which way with bandages on his face, and the other had a toothpick in his mouth and had a nagging cough. Jiraiya found it curious that you would have a toothpick in your mouth while you tended to cough. Wouldn't you be afraid that you'd swallow the damn thing? Oh well, if the guy wanted to be stupid then it wasn't his right to tell the guy otherwise. If the guy wanted to be dumb then it wasn't his right to get involved. Jiraiya opened the magnificent doors and walked into the spacious room. Big potted plants were in each of the corners of the room, filling it with a heavenly forest aroma. On one side of the office there was a bookcase filled, in alphabetical order, with all the political and ninja issues from the past 100 years or so. On the other side was a simple little nightstand with a couple candles on it, as well as what looked like to be an incense stick. The Yondaime always did appreciate the finer arts to meditation and relaxation. Speaking of the said man, he was behind his desk, which would appear normal to the eye, but to the trained eye it looked illustrious. It was made with marvelous craftsmanship, the desktop smooth and still remained looking gorgeous since the Yondaime didn't scratch it at all surprisingly. Behind the desk sat the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Hokage, father of Naruto. His dark green ceremonial robes with black designs all around it gave him an ominous look. Girls might think it handsome on him, but to his opponents and to those who knew him, the robe symbolized his confidence and his love of his village and his desire for the village to be seen as itself and not the representative of the Fire Country. He was the Hokage indeed, but even the previous ones did not ever dress in an attire unfitting to his ninja background. The third Hokage, Sarutobi, wore the ceremonial garbs and robes when it was appropriate, but he always dressed in ninja attire, sleek body underwear, protective bandages and pads, vests, and holsters. Sarutobi was ready for a fight if it ever came. But the fourth had scrapped that, going in a different direction. When he was first named as the Hokage, he wore the ceremonial red and white hat and robes, but he quickly discarded them, preserving them in a container for the next Hokage, but he decided to wear dark green clothing, symbolizing he was the Hokage of the hidden village of the leaf, not the country of fire's symbol of power. The Yondaime's love for his people could only be matched by his pride of his village and his ninja heritage. He instead now wore clothing of a style that suited the Hokage of the leaf, dark green smooth, yet sleek, clothing that had the designs of the leaf drawn into the material. On the back of the robe he wore, Jiraiya was pretty sure there was a dark red swirl going in a counterclockwise direction. Jiraiya walked up to the desk and took a seat in one of the chairs, knowing that his at one time pupil would have him sit to talk about matters. What is it that you wish to report, my old friend? What news do you feel you need to tell me that can't wait till my off hours? His look was not one of annoyance or aggravation, and his words didn't carry that sound either. It was more of a curiosity than anything else. Well, I just wished to inform you that Naruto has succeeded with the water walking exercise, effectively completing the regimen you gave to me for him to follow. He is now at a level probably far beyond than that of any young child his age. The man before Jiraiya smiled in satisfaction, pleased with his son's progress. He's come along better than I did at that time. Was that all you wished to tell me? No. What I really wanted to tell you was that I had made a bet with the little brat because he was so confident that if he could remain on the water for a full 3 minutes by the eve of his birthday, then I would teach him a new jutsu. Well, he agreed and set off to try and maintain his balance, but we had an unexpected visitor. The eldest daughter of Hyuga Hiyashi, Hinata. Her presence, I thought, might have distracted Naruto, but he remained on the water while looking at her and even speaking to her, for over 3 minutes. Yondaime just laughed, as if he wouldn't expect anything less from his son. The number one was unpredictable ninja. His son disliked the fact that at a very young age, he was put on this training schedule, but he knew that Naruto would appreciate it in the long run. The news that Hyuga Hinata was there instead of at her family's house concerned him a little, but he decided to leave that issue to her family. It was not his business, just like it wasn't the Hyuga's business to get involved with his Uzumaki house clan. The Yondaime tried to piece out the puzzle that was laid out before him, and he wondered if it was her presence that really assisted in Naruto defeating Jiraiya in the bet. He asked Jiraiya to give a more detailed description of the day, which Jiraiya reluctantly did, and he soaked up all the information. From Naruto's mastering of the water jutsu, to the use of the fire jutsu, to walking on the water, to the girl's presence, to Naruto's reactions to the girl, which amused him, to Jiraiya's giving Naruto a choice, which he made a mental note of the fact that Naruto had decided to learn the chakra control exercise since he knew that Jiraiya would still have to teach him a jutsu, to the Hyuga branch family member appearing. Hinata's reaction to the man disturbed the Hokage greatly. To lunchtime, a chuckle escaped him when he heard of Naruto's enthusiasm for Ichiraku, and now they were alone in that clearing. Apparently Jiraiya was here to request the use of an important scroll containing the notes the Yondaime had made on the chakra control procedure and what the steps were. He complied with Jiraiya's request, calling out to one of the guards stationed outside, someone called Hayate, to go to his house and get his wife to give him scroll number 3. They waited for a few minutes as he went back to some paperwork until a loud pop was heard with the familiar scent of smoke that marked the return of Anbu members. Hayate handed Yondaime the scroll, who pointed his index finger and touched a mark on the rolled-up parchment, which made the whole thing glow bright yellow, and then unraveled. The Yondaime smiled at Jiraiya, telling him he could now unroll it freely and read it as well. Jiraiya figured that it was a double-layered seal placed on the scroll. You might be able to break one level of the protection, which was keeping it rolled up, but you couldn't read it unless you broke the other one. And Jiraiya was pretty sure that the Uzumaki Hokage had made it so that you had to deactivate both at the same time or you just weren't going to get it. His pupil was always wily and he would expect nothing less from him. He rolled the scroll back up, said his goodbye, and made his way out the door, leaving the Yondaime to his thoughts. If he is at this level already, then he might be able to master it faster than I did. The girl's presence seems to have a positive effect as well. Maybe it is time that Naruto learns how to be a team player. I hope you will be happy with your gift, Naruto, because I'm giving you what you want. So what do you think, huh? This chapter is just an introductory chapter, as are the next two. But if you can get past those 2 chapters, then the story takes a more interesting spin. If you have questions, feel free to message me or make them apparent in reviews. Reviews are welcome, as are constructive criticism that can help me on my writing. I'm not afraid to say I'm a rookie, but just because this is my first story does not mean it won't be good. I've made a layout of the story and even I am surprised with how I tie up loose ends later. So anyways, here's a preview for the next chapter. Naruto suffers through his most precious day. Can anything bring him around? Sounds lame at first, but I felt the need to show you why the Naruto in my story hates his birthday so much. Give it a shot. Till next time. The morning breeze blew through the windows of a luxurious room, filled with exquisite art and furniture, as well as a small blonde boy. Naruto felt the breeze, even as he lay half asleep, and pulled the gargantuan bed comforter over him, huddling into a fetal position for warmth. He had come to know that the month he was in, as well as the next two, sucked so much. Yes, even the month of his birthday, which happened to be exactly this day. The breeze seemed like an ominous omen to the boy, the chill he felt being the cold, clammy hands of doom. It was almost that time he would be asked to awaken and then be forced with ungraceful tact. Naruto sucked in his breath and knew he was going to regret awakening today, but he had to grace his parents and the guests with his presence after all. It was like his birthday was some festival, as all the nuts and whack jobs seemed to come out of hiding, the most sinister and evil of them lurking around every corner, waiting with malicious intent to wish him a happy birthday. The only problem was, how could he have a happy birthday if all he ever did was greet and thank people, be courteous in the largest sense of the word, and act like a young gentleman? For Christ's sake, I'm 9 years old. As he gripped the comforter, he sucked in his breath and bit down on the hem of the material, trying to refrain from quite verbally slaughtering the English language. The use of such inappropriate words would seem most ungentlemanly, and his parents would continue to frown upon him as he continued to disgrace his father and the family. The pride with which he took in his heritage could be seen as such an inspiration if the guy wasn't a total idiot. But Naruto did respect his father and his desire for family honor, and he felt that he needed to be respectful, for no matter what, he was an Uzumaki. But back to the reaction of his gripping of the comforter. The boy was now clenching his fists, but not into a fist, afraid to put pressure on his tender skin. The skin of his hands looked much like raw fish. The pinkish raw coloration that the skin held was enough to almost make him sick right on the spot, and the pain wasn't helping too much either. He could see where his hands were burned and scarred, and even some disturbing patches where the skin looked like it was melted off. The pain reminded him of his first day after beginning that damn exercise. That same day where he mastered the water walking exercise, the same day he met that young girl and enjoyed her company as they talked away. When Jiraiya returned, he had a peculiar looking scroll in his hands and he set him off to begin the exercise. It was terrifically awful and magnificently painful on his poor hands. The activity entailed him focusing chakra into his hand, which was pretty easy to do. Then he had to start spinning it, and thus the fun began. The stamina training had paid off, as did the building of his chakra stores, but that was why he ended up suffering. He apparently had so much chakra for his immature body that the chakra he was pumping into his hand was too much and therefore was causing him harm. Despite all his controlling exercises which should have made this easy, he could not seem to get the desired reaction that Jiraiya was trying to teach him. The way he showed him was by doing the first 2 steps and then stepping up to the water. He started to spin his chakra, which gathered water into his hands, which he continued to spin until the water stayed in his hands and in a perfect form. The form Jiraiya chose was one of a disc. The water was spinning with the chakra so fast that the water was taking the form of a disc. The explanation of why this was so important to accomplish was because that was one of the most difficult things to perform with this technique, giving it form. Giving the swirling chakra a form was the most beneficial way to turn the exercise into a technique for attacking. The countless times he attempted it had been painful, and apparently not just to him. He noticed that Hinata, who was still watching him at the time, seemed to blanch when his hands started to sizzle as if his skin were cooked bacon. He was also disturbed by this and couldn't help but curse the old man for teaching this to him. Yes, he could have stopped, but he was too much like his father. If his father was an idiot, then Naruto was a complete dumbass. Night started to settle in as the sun was setting on the horizon, and Naruto said his farewells to Hinata, who did the same. Naruto hoped to see her soon, which he noticed caused her mouth to hang open slightly and a red taint to form on her cheeks. When he returned to the same spot the next day, however, she was not there and did not appear, which actually depressed him. But he focused on the exercise, which left the same results, but this time he passed out by noon from the pain. The same thing happened again the next day, a little later mind you, for he passed out at 1 p.m. this time. Now here it was, the day of his birthday, and he was miserable from the searing pain in his hands. If he had stuck with just one hand the whole time, then that one hand would be nothing but a skeleton by now. No matter how much he didn't want to seem weak to others, a tear managed to fall from his eyes because of the retching pain. He heard the familiar sound of sandals, but it wasn't emphasized from supporting the large frame of the hulking man who trains him, but it was light and temperous. Crap, it's my father, I should have known he'd be the one to wake me up. He tried to sit up and get out of bed before his father could begin, but it was too late. Wake you up, boy. It's time to grace the day with your handsome, exquisite smile, my son. Don't be shy, it's your birthday. His voice boomed so loudly in Naruto's room that it left echoes, despite the fact that it was large and there was a freaking window open. Did this man realize that he almost broke his own son's eardrums? By the way he flashed his goofy smile, that was a hell no. Naruto had a rather large bead of sweat falling from him out of sheer embarrassment of his father. Like it was said earlier, Naruto believed his father to be an idiot, and here he was, proving Naruto's theory to be ever so accurate. The bright green ceremonial robe his father wore was an eyesore to the still sleepy Naruto, standing out too much with the wild blonde hair his father possessed. That bastard was responsible for passing down a gene so annoying, Naruto wanted to punch him almost every morning. He couldn't get his hair to do anything, it was so unruly and so unkempt. Naruto feared he might end up looking like a hobo, but at least it could be trimmed, and that was the only thing saving his father from an alarm clock upside the head right now. That and the fact that anything he touched sent tremendous tremors of pain through his arms into the section of his brain that processed that stuff, which sent a signal to his vocal cords to begin a tirade of verbal assaults that would make anyone flinch and would probably make his mother's ears bleed. Back to his father, though, who was beaming at him with a smile that was infectious on every level of its meaning. You might smile from seeing it, and yet you might also develop an ulcer. The robes went all the way down to his feet, which were covered with a pair of black sandals. In summary, he was unique all right. Now he was awake and would have to get up and get dressed, and by doing so, his father would see the damage he had done to himself and hell would probably break loose. Doesn't really matter, the faster this day gets done, the better. It was a shame that he felt he couldn't enjoy his special day, but it just wasn't looking too optimistic right now. He got up, slumping his arms down to hang at his sides as he walked over to the dresser, only to be put in a headlock by his father who, despite having a somewhat average body frame, was unfathomably powerful. Last time Naruto sparred with his father, Naruto's punch was blocked, and with a simple flick of the wrist, Naruto was sent sailing through a tree. His father didn't apologize, just smiled, laughed at him, and said he just doesn't know his own strength. Now Naruto was stuck in a headlock and couldn't do anything about it. Damn it, Dad, that hurts. Can't I get some peace on my birthday instead of having to deal with crap like this? And miss out on the chance to turn you into a sour, no chance. You really need to take these things in stride, Naruto. It'll make you better in the end. Laugh once in a while, your mornings will be a lot brighter. Kinda hard to smile in the morning when I'm in pain, in a headlock, and was forced to wake up early, Naruto managed between gritted teeth as he struggled with his father. If you didn't use so much chakra in your hands, then you might not hurt yourself so much. Before Naruto protested, he continued. I know, but it isn't the amount of chakra you use, it's the velocity of the spin which gives it its form. You have enough time to perfect it in your life. 4 years should be sufficient, if I'm correct. Naruto stopped squirming and processed the information, all of it. 4 years. He couldn't mean. He was released from his father's death grip and looked up, seeing his mother standing at the doorframe out of the corner of his eyes, but paying the most attention to his father. Number 1. It is later than you think it is and therefore you already have guests, so let's get you dressed. Number 2. He bent down, ruffling Naruto's hair, and looking him right in the eyes with the piercing blue eyes. But they were gentle and were sparkling with pride. Naruto had seen that look before and he was wondering what he was going to say before his father continued. You will be attending the Ninja Academy in a week's time. Naruto's eyes sparkled with happiness that was so contagious, he heard his mother giggle. Happy birthday, my son. I'm so proud of you. Naruto leapt at his father, excited beyond belief. His hands hurt when he wrapped them around his dad, but he didn't care. His happiness and joy was too great and overpowered the pain, possibly the only thing that could overcome the pain. His father broke the hug, told him to get dressed and they would see him in the common room. Naruto nodded and went to getting prepared. He figured he could make himself more presentable now that he was in such a great mood. He felt he could even stomach those cold bastards' fake smiles. After taking a quick shower, he put on a dark green ceremonial robe, which was similar to his father's robe, and unwrapped the bandages that were already on his hands, wrapping them in new bandages which his mother had given him when she saw the injuries a couple of nights ago. Now he was ready and did a quick 5-minute meditation session, getting himself prepared to greet everyone and receive his gifts and wishes of happy birthday. He walked down the hall, a quick left turn, making a right turn onto the second hallway, and made his way into the common room, which was already bustling with noise of people. As he entered the room, everyone turned to see him and all busted out simultaneously, "Happy birthday, Naruto." He was almost knocked off his feet and left reeling from the assault, until he felt someone mussing with his hair. He looked in the direction to see old man Sarutobi standing there with a happy grin on his face. Naruto embraced the old man, knowing that he didn't mind him being there, one of the few elder people of nobility he actually enjoyed the presence of. Sarutobi wished him a happy birthday and whispered that he had a special gift for him. He heard that all the time from most of the elders that gave him gifts, but coming from Sarutobi it actually meant something. Naruto broke away from the old man, planning to find his father and start with the whole greeting and gesturing thing until he saw a familiar figure standing in front of his father, with light purplish robes, long hair, and, Naruto was pretty confident about this, white eyes. He walked to the man and his father, stood before them both and bowed respectfully to Hyuga Hiyashi. An odd thing happened though as the man, who looked serious and as stuck up as it comes, chuckled at him. That will be all of that for today, young boy. It is your day and I have given you a gift that I think should be suitable, as has my daughter. Hinata, she's here. He was actually very interested to know if she were here. This caused the Yondaime's eyebrows to raise. Looks like my boy has made a friend quite quickly. Yes, she sort of insisted. She come here. He looked like he rolled his eyes when he said that. After he spoke, as if by magic, Hinata appeared from behind Hiyashi, with a small smile on her face as she looked at Naruto. Hiyashi moved to give his daughter less cover to hide behind. Don't be shy, Hinata, come on and say hello to the guest of honor. She clenched her fists but managed to look up at him in the eyes and smiled again, giving a small bow as well. Happy birthday, Naruto-kun. Thank you, Hinata-chan. Kun. Didn't know those two were that friendly. He thought it was interesting how all his plans seemed to have unexpected, yet very convenient, positive outcomes. Maybe their presence together in the academy would boost their performance. He would have a discussion about it with Hiyashi later over a cup of tea. Then the ominous, yet benign, presence was felt of a familiar figure. He made it. Naruto will get a kick out of this. He saw that Naruto had noticed it too, for he managed to break away from his and Hinata's gaze and turned to look in the direction and saw the shaggy dark hair, long robes with the red fan on the back, and familiar red eyes of one Uchiha Itachi. Itachi-san, you came. He ran at the Uchiha teen and stopped right in front of him, as Itachi knelt down and started to mess with the blonde boy's hair. He had a genuine smile on his face too, which made Naruto brighten up more. The only person Itachi really cared about a great deal besides his younger brother was Naruto. The boy was a complete opposite to the stuck-ups of the great clans and was truly genuine with his feelings. Itachi actually wouldn't have minded to oversee Naruto's training if it weren't for the fact that he had so many family meetings to attend and then the fact that he was a high-class superior-level Anbu, so he was away and busy a lot of the time. But if he ever got the chance to come by and visit Naruto, he would. He pulled a double time in his most recent mission to make sure he made it back in time for Naruto's birthday, which meant a great deal to the boy. He reached inside his robe and pulled out a package and handed it to him, the dark red packaging giving it an eerie look but so tempting. He looked to his father, who gave the nod and he began to open it. I realized how much you liked your gift last year and so I did my best to get something that you would like for this year. What the wrapping covered was a small box. Upon opening it, there was a thick piece of parchment, but he quickly realized it was just because it was folded into many squares. Once he unfolded the paper, which ended up being quite big, he saw that it wasn't just any paper he was holding but a scroll, and this scroll had many notes jostled down everywhere. Giving a look of minor confusion, he looked at Itachi who smiled at him. That scroll there is all of my notes, from when I was younger. Follow those notes, as well as the guidelines set on it, and you should be able to learn to use somewhat simple techniques that upon mastering, can be used in complex patterns and skills. I believe you will benefit the most from receiving this than my younger brother will. His statement about his younger brother had actually quelled a doubt that was brewing inside of him. He didn't want Itachi to give these to him and not to his little brother, but if Itachi thought that Sasuke would be fine without them, then who was he to complain? Naruto rolled up the scroll and put it back in the box, beaming the whole time. The conversations and laughter continued, occasionally hushing every now and then, as someone else handed Naruto a gift. New clothing, scrolls, shoes, a comfy jacket, a new set of kunai and shurikens, and some more furniture. It finally came down to those that mattered. Itachi had to leave, after giving a quick briefing on his mission, wishing Naruto a happy birthday, and that was probably the last time he would see him in a month or so, maybe longer. He had yet to receive gifts from Sarutobi, Jiraiya, Hinata, well, the Hyugas in general, his mother, and he knew his father wasn't done. Sarutobi walked up to him and handed him a large package, which he opened up, revealing a pair of bracers. They were made of an exquisite design, the steel parts smooth and unbelievably fine, yet lightweight. It looked like it was worn like an elbow pad but across the forearm, and he noticed that their small holsters on the inside portion, which was explained were for kunai that could be accessed a lot more stealthily than for reaching for one out of a holster. Naruto smiled at the old man and received a hand messing with his hair again. I swear, what is so addictive about my hair? Next up came Jiraiya, who explained to the whole crowd that he had lost a bet with him and therefore Jiraiya owed him a jutsu, a good one, which he emphasized. Therefore, my boy, my gift to you is teaching you the Kage Bunshin. A lot of mumbling went on with that announcement and he felt himself becoming red with embarrassment. Was it his plan to try and impress everyone with the fact that I was going to be learning a jutsu, or was he trying to embarrass me? He quickly jerked to attention when Hiashi walked up to him. The man who seemed so cold before now seemed less stern. Could he actually be soft under that face? I was told by your father that you really haven't been given any assistance in taijutsu, so here you go, young one. Naruto took the small package and unwrapped it, which was a book that was filled to the brim with taijutsu steps and procedures, stances and maneuvers, and styles that benefit the young, fast-growing ninja. He smiled with gratitude towards Hiashi and bowed, receiving a bow from him as well. Naruto smiled also at Hinata and thanked her until Hiashi, who had gone back to her side, her towards Naruto. She walked towards him, with a small wrapped package in her hands, and Naruto realized that she had gotten him a separate gift. She handed it to him and he unwrapped it, revealing an amber-colored jar with a dark substance inside. Naruto took the top off, being careful not to put too much strain on his hands. Getting the lid off, he was assaulted by the scent of peppermint, as he saw a dark green-colored gel was inside the jar. If I may ask, what is this stuff, Hinata-chan? If you would take off your bandages, I will show you. Naruto raised his eyebrows at her but did so, very reluctantly, and revealed his disfigured hands for all who could see to lose their lunch. Hinata again blanched at the sight, becoming an even paler color than she already was. She tentatively reached into the jar, putting some ointment on her fingers. This might sting, Naruto-kun, a lot. She finished seeing the degree of the damage. Naruto took the loose tape and put it in his mouth, biting down. She began to apply the stuff to Naruto and he bit down hard, almost seeing stars. It burned a great deal but slowly, too slowly for him. It began to calm and the pain just seemed to be leaving. He felt so relieved when she was done moving her fingers across his hand and felt himself blush when he sighed in relief. Some people giggled at the display while others gave little ahs. Naruto looked at his hand and saw that his skin just seemed to be regaining its normal color and the pain no longer seemed to be there. He quickly unwrapped the other hand and she put on the ointment on that hand too. When she was done, his hands felt so much better. He thanked her, she bowed to him, he bowed to her and she walked back to her father. The next gift was from his mother, which included a great deal of blank scrolls, writing utensils, holsters, a bag to hold it all and a neat little strap that went across his chest that seemed to hold everything to him. He thanked his mother with a kiss on the cheek and his father came up behind him. Patting him on the shoulders, he turned to the crowd, smiling proudly. Well everyone, I'd like to go ahead and announce that my boy has expressed a certain desire and I have complied. He will, in 4 years, hopefully join Konoha's forces as he will be attending the academy for the next 4 years. There was a moment that was given so people could clap until he turned to Naruto and the clapping ceased. My son, that is not all I wish to give you. This is, for me, a very proud moment and I'm happy for you and with this great day I wish to give you this. He handed him a scroll. What is the deal with the scrolls this year? And Naruto took it, opening it and seeing only one line on the parchment. That, my son, is the family secret treasure. You, and only you, can read the contents. I'll explain the details later but for now, let us move to the dining room for some tea and cake, why don't we? The bustling of people moving to the said room was quite noisy but Naruto didn't care, right now he just wanted to find Hinata, the only person he could relate to and have a conversation with. He was ecstatic that he was going to be going to the Ninja Academy and it was a bonus that she would be there as well, if he was correct. He found her and joined her by her side. They talked a little, her trying to explain the medicine she used on him but he really didn't understand the full concept behind it. Just conversing about ordinary things, they didn't realize that they had ended up sitting next to each other at the massive table, with their fathers seated rather coincidentally across from them. They had an interesting conversation as well, the Yondaime trying to convince Hiashi to send Hinata to the academy just a little bit early so that they could go together. The Yondaime's theory was that they might help each other out. Hiashi, after a while of sitting there, watching his daughter smile at the boy and converse with him, began to believe him and decided that he agreed that it might be the best thing. He didn't want his daughter to become dependent on anybody, especially the boy, but it wouldn't hurt for them to start at the same time. Yondaime smiled, content, and continued to sip his tea and eat his slice of cake, being a complete sucker for the sweets. The guests started to file out around 4 p.m., which Naruto was very grateful of since his cheeks were sore from all the fake smiles he gave to the unwanted guests. As the unimportant ones left, Naruto was able to spend some time with just the people he wanted to spend time with. He actually got a visit by Hatake Kakashi, who seemed to have a complex with appearing on time. The tall man with spiky silver hair and the Hittite with the Konoha symbol on it covering his left eye and a mask covering his lower face gave the man a mysterious feel. What amused Naruto about Kakashi was that he always seemed to joke around and was playful, like a little kid, despite the fact that he was around 20 or so. Kakashi and Itachi were in the same caliber of ninja, both joining the Anbu at an outrageously young age and being extremely powerful as two of the most feared and revered of all the Konoha nin. Kakashi gave the boy a card with a simple phrase on it: "Times are tough, life is hard, here's your feckin' birthday card." Inside the card were 5 notes that stated that he could eat 3 bowls of ramen for free, for each note, at Ichiraku. He thanked Kakashi, who, Naruto guessed, smiled back and went to the Yondaime to discuss something. His father was talking with Sarutobi, Jiraiya, and Hiashi, and when Kakashi joined in, they huddled together, speaking in low voices, laughing about certain things, and taking sips of tea or sake, depending on who it was that was drinking what. Naruto looked around and saw Hinata talking with his mother and he just stood there watching, smiling, not realizing that his mother noticed him. "Naruto, dear, how about you take the young girl and show her around the house while I help attend to the dishes?" His mouth dropped a little, his voice lost, wanting to protest, but sighed defeatedly and nodded, which was rewarded by her warm smile. He nodded his head at Hinata, who bowed slightly, causing him to groan, and walked over to her and continued out of the room. "I told you you don't have to be so formal with me," he muttered to her with just a little hint of agitation. Twists and turns, lefts and rights, and a lot of simple-minded explanations. He explained to her that the bedrooms were meant for his family but most of them were traveling right now around Fire Country, so a lot of them were empty. There were 3 unassigned guest rooms and 11 occupied bedrooms, though only 3 were in use right now with him, his parents, and Jiraiya, who decided to stay with them since he agreed to oversee his training. Hinata was impressed with the simplicity, yet striking elegance, of the house he lived in and was surprised when she saw his room. Naruto was a little uneasy with her going into his room, not because he didn't want people in there, but because his room might be offensive or unimpressive. But once she stepped in, she was in awe of all the decorative features in the room, the artwork on the walls, the specially made furniture, the woodwork that had gems made into it, and surprisingly, the bed. She actually ran up to it and jumped on it, bouncing a little to test its softness. "Your room is a lot bigger than mine is, Naruto-kun. A lot nicer stuff too." Naruto now felt guilty that he had shown her, afraid that it was offensive to her. "Your bed is much bigger than mine and you have all the art around your room. I'm jealous. My room isn't all that special. I mean, come on, you have to have much better stuff than this. Your family is much more well known that you should have received a lot of nice things from allies of your father. Well, my father doesn't really approve of me having exotic material around. I think he is afraid I might dishonor him or something." She bit her lip as he saw her feet fidgeting. "Well, I don't know your father all that much, but if he were afraid of anything, I'm assuming he would be afraid that you would become materialistic, but I don't know. My father doesn't really care since he knows I don't care about all this stuff too much." He saw her look a bit shocked that he would say that and so he continued. "All these gifts, Hinata," he said to her motioning through his whole room, "are from stuck-ups and stiffs that want nothing else than favors from my father. That's all they are and I for one can't stand that. These aren't sincere gifts, like your ointment. They are tokens given in a manner that will hopefully please my father and make him more accustomed to lending them some assistance, if required. I only keep it around so that I don't disappoint my mother. She's sweet and all, but she's dense if she thinks that these are all heartfelt gifts. I like the gifts that actually mean something, from people who are meaningful to me. Itachi, Sarutobi, Jiraiya, Kakashi, you, Mom, and Dad had the only gifts that really meant anything to me. By the way, thanks again. She blushed and smiled warmly at the compliment that her gift had meant something special to him. Why, you're welcome. How does your hand feel? I wasn't sure if I did it right, but I had no way of testing it without an injury to test it on. It worked great, Hinata-chan. My hands hurt so badly, you couldn't imagine, but the pain is now almost completely gone. I only feel a tenderness where my skin hasn't regrown yet. Yet another blanched look from Hinata, but she still smiled at his compliment. So I'm going to the Ninja Academy too, he said to her with a huge grin plastered on his face, proud that he would be getting the chance to become one of his village's finest. Hinata smiled and nodded her head in acknowledgement, secretly happy that he was to attend the academy. When are you starting? I guess when father tells me so, although he might make me wait till I am 9 as well. When is your birthday, Hinata-chan? December the 27th. Why? Oh, no reason. It's just you knew when mine was, so I figured I should know when yours was. Hey, wanna see my favorite part of the house? She nodded and he took her hand, guiding her through the hallways and ended at a section of the house that opened up into the meditation garden. She smiled and breathed in deep, taking in the luscious feel of the area. There were semi-tall trees and bushes, and the grass was neat and trim, yet very lush. There were flowers of an assortment of colors, ranging from yellow to white to red to purple to blue and to green. In the middle was a fountain, with a small pond, and she ran up to the water, putting her fingertips into the water to test its temperature. This is nice, it's just like ours at the house, she said as she walked over to the different colored flowers, sniffing each one and releasing a satisfied sigh as each one smelled wonderful. Naruto just chuckled at her enthusiasm for such a simple thing as flower scents, peace, and tranquility. Yeah, this is the only place that is usually quiet enough for me to meditate without being disturbed. If my mind is ever cloudy, I just come here, sit down, and look up at the sky. His face held a sort of calmness as he recalled all the times he would come here when he was younger and just get to be to himself. He uncowingly had sat down and started to look up at the sky and let the tranquil nature this place exuded wash over him. Hinata had come a bit closer to him and started to do the same thing, looking at the sky, curling her knees up into her chest, and continuing to breathe in the atmosphere of the place. Unknown to the kids, their father figures had found them and chuckled silently at the sight. Naruto, who felt their presence, instantly became annoyed that his father was finding amusement from him enjoying his birthday. You know, you're not as stealthy as you would like to think you are, Dad. He told him, shifting his weight so that he could look behind him without putting too much strain on his neck. He noticed Hinata had stood up, brushing grass remnants from her clothing, and he was slightly annoyed more that their appearance had actually ruined his time with her. The short time he had come to know her, he thought of her as his friend, possibly his first. Itachi, who was young and somewhat close to him in age, acted more like a brother would than a friend. Naruto stood up as well, looking at his and Hinata's fathers, especially Hiashi, since he seemed to be trying to take into account something that wasn't physically tangible and make an accurate judgment, whatever it may be. Hinata shifted uncomfortably under his gaze and started to dig her bare toes in the grass. Her sandals probably were in his room when she discarded them so she could jump on his bed without being disrespectful to his furniture. It was then that Hiashi cleared his throat and looked at the man next to him, who returned the gaze and was received by a nod from Hiashi, which made him smile back at Hiashi and then to the youngsters, who had a mixed reaction to it but both being out of uncomfort. Hinata lowered her head, blushing slightly at such a strong smile being directed from the leader of the village. Naruto, however, slumped in his posture, breathing out a deep sigh of exasperation for his father's stupid and overdone mannerisms. It was Hiyashi's voice that broke both the kids from their trance, making them jump slightly. Ahem, I think this will be all for today. I must get back to the manor and do some of the paperwork. Naruto-san, I wish you a farewell and hope that your birthday was enjoyable. Come, Hinata. Hi, Otu-san. She said as she walked to her father, but then noticed that she was missing her footwear, as the grass continued to tickle her feet. Oh, I left my sandals in Naruto's room, she said to her father. I will go get them if you will wait for me a moment. Let my boy escort you then. The house can be a maze if you don't live here. Naruto, would you? Yeah, I will. Come on, Hinata-chan. He said, cutting off his father, who just smiled back at him and watched as he and Hinata left to retrieve her shoes. You seem unusually happy today, Hokage-sama. Something else is here than meets the eye. Would you care to enlighten me? Hiyashi asked him, wondering what he could be so thrilled with. It was true, it was his son's birthday and it wasn't unnatural for the Yondaime to be hyper or happy, but it seemed to be different today. I'm just happy that my boy has found a child his age who can be his first true friend. The only other person he ever addresses with an informal suffix added to it is Uchiha Itachi, who has taken a certain fondness of him. Your daughter is the first person his age who he has met and addresses on such a friendly level. I feel them being in the academy at the same time is going to help out with both of them. They will probably push each other to be better and defeat each other's weaknesses. Don't you think so? You seem to have faith in not just your boy's ability but my daughter's, and you do not much of her progression. I have not been able to train with my boy and help him as much as I have wanted to, but Jiraiya has been doing well with him. He reports that Naruto has a certain knack for some things, like chakra control. He told Hiyashi, who responded with a raised eyebrow, wondering what the level might be and if it was close to the branch family's prodigy. And I'm sure that your daughter has a great deal of talent and ability that just needs a little bit of time to surface. Time, Hiyashi spoke as his words were laced with disappointment, is a luxury the elders won't give so easily. They have heard that my youngest daughter, Hanabi, seems to show more promise than Hinata has and are pushing for me to make a decision on which one would make a better heir apparent. It is Hinata's right to be the leader when she is grown, but if the elders of the clan do not respect her then. I just do not want her to go through the same things her mother did. His face had become saddened as he recalled what had happened to his beautiful wife, the horrible way she was treated by the family, and he did not want any of their children to go through the torment that she must have gone through. If only there was a way that I could break through that layer of inferiority that has become established within her psyche, then she might be able to make some serious progress with her training. That is the very reason you should let her go to the academy with my boy. He has a certain feel about him that just seems to grab at people and change them for the better. Itachi was a cold loner, diligently doing his missions and returning to his family to train or do family business. Now, he frequents our house when he manages the time between his duties and treats Naruto as if he were his little brother as well. My sensei, Jiraiya, had no desire to have any more apprentices after me, but he warmed up to Naruto and decided to oversee his training from when he was young. Your daughter seems to have had the same effect on my boy, and I think that he will have a positive effect on her. As he said this, Hiyashi thought about all the words the Yondaime had said, continuing to let it stew in his mind, wondering if it was a good thing to let the Hokage's son partner with the heir of the Hyugas. But it did sound like it might be the best thing. The ninja academy would allow her to get out and see how other ninjas work and train, and maybe let that shield of hers be broken away as others her age surrounded the young girl. He closed his eyes as he pondered the possibilities and then opened them, coming to a conclusion. It was at this moment that Naruto and Hinata had returned, both giggling as Naruto had finished telling Hinata about how he got back Jiraiya the other day for all the times the old man had woken him up with water on the head. They saw their fathers still conversing, although it looked like Hiyashi was deep in thought. The men turned to see their children looking, and Hiyashi had something unexpected on his face, a warm smile. "Oh, Otu-san, I'm ready," she said as she was taken aback by the sudden appearance of warmth across her father's usually stern and cold face. "As am I, but before we leave, I wish to ask of a favor of you, Naruto." Naruto looked at the man, as he was also taken aback by Hinata's father. Not for the smile on his face, though it didn't seem to settle right on the man's face. After seeing the man with such an unflinchingly cold face, a smile just seemed to be out of place, like a luscious apple tree in a barren desert, but it was the fact that the man wanted to ask him of a favor. Yes sir. I have been informed that you will start attending the academy by the beginning of next week by your father. If you would you be willing to come to our manor on that same morning?" I guess I could, but why would you want that?" Now his interest was piqued. If what Hiyashi was getting at was what Naruto thought it was, then he was going to be ecstatic. "It is just that I would like for my daughter to have a familiar person with her on her first day so that she won't be so nervous. I think you being there will help her to not be so apprehensive on her first day at the academy." "So would you." Naruto's grin exploded all over his face and he couldn't contain himself. He would be going to the academy, he found that out at the beginning of his day. And now, seemingly at the end of his special day, he found out that he would be attending with his new friend. He was overjoyed that this day went so well. Hiyashi was amused by the boy's reaction and by his daughter's too. It looked as though she were happy that she would be going to the academy with Naruto, and when Naruto grabbed her hands and started to jump excitedly, trying to get her to join him, he chuckled at the sight, feeling that he had made the smartest decision in his life. After he finally calmed down, releasing Hinata, who was blushing from the display she had just seen and shown, she had joined in with him a few seconds after he started, his energy being contagious after all, and looked to her father to see if he disapproved. On the contrary, he was smiling still, but the Yondaime had his right up to his chin, rubbing it while looking at her and Naruto, chuckling slightly. Naruto had put his hand behind his head, scratching it, with a blush of his own across his face that he had acted like such a child, in front of his father and Hinata's father. "I thought that would make my daughter happy. If I knew it would make you so happy, Naruto, then I would have done that as my gift," he said as he chuckled lightly at his own joke. "So I am to take your response as a yes?" Naruto nodded, still embarrassed for the way he acted. After that, he, Hinata, his father, and her father made their way to the front of the house, discussing the small arrangements that were already made for an escort for the both of them. They decided on a woman by the name of Yuhi Kurine, who had agreed to be Hinata's escort when she was younger. They needed to be at the academy by 8 a.m. exactly, which would mean Naruto would have to wake up earlier now. He didn't mind right now, but he figured it would eventually become a nuisance. When they reached the front door, Hiyashi and Hinata bid their farewells, wishing him another happy birthday before they walked out of the house and back to their homes. Naruto, after seeing the door close, making sure that they might not hear them, pumped his fist into the air, shouting, "Yada!" His voice rung out from that area throughout the entire building, it seemed, but only got smiles from the remaining visitors, who were Kakashi, Jiraiya, who didn't count as a guest, and Sarutobi. The rest of the evening was spent with him putting all his stuff into places in his room, not really worrying where or how it was placed there. The only things he really kept around were all the scrolls and books, as well as Hinata's medicine, which was put on the bedside table where his alarm clock sat. He realized now that he would need that damn thing more than ever to avoid being woken up by his father or Jiraiya. The next few days were like a blur, moving so fast as he attempted to learn the jutsu Jiraiya promised to teach him, which happened to be a Junin level technique called Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. One hand seal, but damn, it was hard to do this jutsu, for it required not the expert use of the hand seals but a much larger amount of chakra than what Naruto was used to using. Plus, it had something to do with how the user visualized the results. Apparently, you needed to tell yourself how many bunchins you wanted to make and then look into your chakra stores and split it accordingly. The difficulty with this was, he just didn't know how to do something that complex yet. He was told by Jiraiya that it would probably take him about a year, maybe a little more or possibly a little less, to learn how to do this. It might take until he was through with the 4 years in the academy before he finally got the hang of using the technique to anywhere close to its full potential. Patience was the key, and Naruto just seemed to lack that when he couldn't do something in the amount of time he wanted. The big day was fast approaching and he was getting more and more anxious about his first day at the academy. His bags were packed, pouches filled accordingly with a number of kunai and shukens, and blank parchments and scrolls filled into the pockets